Supreme Court has dismissed a petition filed by disgraced Justice Verma, who was caught with a pile of burnt cash notes in his residence earlier this year. A judge of the Allahabad High Court, Justice Verma, had challenged the in-house inquiry committee's report and the impeachment recommendation that was made by former Chief Justice Sanjeev Khanna. The Supreme Court bench today dismissed this petition, stating that Justice Verma's conduct did not inspire any confidence. The court also observed that transparency was maintained as far as the inquiry process is concerned, something that Justice Verma had actually challenged, which was the grounds for him to take this up in Supreme Court. The letter by the former Chief Justice to the President and Prime Minister was also constitutional, is what the Supreme Court bench said. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean decks have been cleared as far as Justice Verma's impeachment is concerned? Will this now come up in the next parliamentary session that will take place? And more importantly, the case that is all about the intersection of law, public conduct and confidence of the public in judiciary. Will that now be restored is the big question. Let's get in two lawyers joining me on the panel. Nalin Kohli, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, also with the BJP, and Jay Ananth, another advocate of the Supreme Court and someone who will speak and represent the other side in terms of the other aspects as far as this case is concerned. Mr. Kohli, let me start with you. The one thing after Supreme Court's rejection and also the very scathing comments that came in today, the sense one gets is decks have been cleared finally. You think so?
First of all, it was on expected lines. The judgment by Justice Dipankar Datta and Justice Masi, in terms of the fact that Justice Verma himself had never presented himself before the inquiry committee. Now let's get back to the facts. There is an incident of fire in Justice Verma's house. There's the expose of large sums of money in sacks. There is no explanation forthcoming or credible explanation as to how such a large sum of money was at Justice Verma's house. Now the argument is it's my outhouse, but it is the perimeter of the secured area within which Justice Verma and his family lived. In that process, the Honorable Chief Justice of India, Justice Sanjeev Khanna at that time, he asked the Delhi High Court Chief Justice, Justice Upadhyay, to immediately inquire into it. When it was found that there are some questionable issues here, a committee was founded. That committee and what the committee thereafter did was exactly as per the precedent or the law which is laid down to deal in such cases. And Justice Sanjeev Khanna, Chief Justice Sanjeev Khanna, did exactly that. So today, in effect, what the judgment has said is that the procedure followed is correct. Justice Verma, not having participated in the inquiry, can't at a belated stage now come across and immediately speak on it. So I think, or try to challenge it. So I think the judgment was on expected lines, and in any way, the next steps are before Parliament, as and when Parliament will take that up.
Indeed. Jay Ananth, come in there in terms of the facts of the case that Nalin Kohli pointed out. Now, of course, it is up to the Parliament how soon it will begin impeachment proceedings, and we'll come to that in just a minute. But your thoughts and your first reaction as far as is it time over and time up as far as Justice Verma is concerned?
Hi, Gauri. Good evening. At the outset, I take great umbrage at the manner in which this entire issue has now been sort of introduced by calling him a disgraced judge and so on. I disagree with that. I think it's very unfair, number one. Number two, I think the judiciary in India has let down one of their own, very importantly. And I think we're missing the main point here. Nobody's getting into the fact right now about whether he was guilty, whether there was money found in an outhouse or not. I think all of this is completely premature. The question before the Honorable Supreme Court was simply this: has the procedure that has been followed correctly? And according to me, the answer, respectfully, is no. And simply because that report which came out, the in-house committee's report, that prematurely recommended removal. There was no requirement for that in a fact-finding committee's conclusion. So that is one major issue. Second, this entire witch hunt, which I call it a witch hunt against Justice Verma, it's based on a preconceived narrative.
Sir? Why is it a witch hunt? The Supreme Court's observations are very clear.
I'll answer that. Please allow me.
Sure.
No. Gauri, with great respect, with all due respect, the Supreme Court has not pronounced on Justice Verma's guilt. Let's get that out of the way first and foremost. This was a challenge by Justice Verma to the methodology and the procedure that was applied to him in this entire case. This was not a verdict on his guilt at all. Let's get that out of the way, please. And I want to make something very clear here, and your viewers must understand this. One is not for a moment saying that if indeed Justice Verma is guilty of taking, of having unaccounted cash in his house, that he should be defended in any manner. Not for a moment is anybody suggesting that. I'm only saying that the irony here is that even a member of the judiciary has been let down because he has not been given a fair chance to defend himself. And I will tell you why. The witnesses, for example, that were brought in this, in this so-called in-house committee, he never got a chance to cross-examine them. The real inquiry, if you ask me, has to happen in terms of the domain of Parliament. Why are we short-circuiting it? Article 124 contains the methodology in which a judge's removal has to be dealt with in terms of the Judges Inquiry Act, 1968. And the entire process and procedure is laid down there. There has to be a notice. There has to be a notice that has to be sent from either members of the Lok Sabha or from the Rajya Sabha. This has to be accepted by the Speaker. Then a committee has to be set up, a 3-member committee. And then a chance is given, Gauri. This is very important. And please, for a moment, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I think you've raised a your channel has raised a very important, vital national issue in terms of judicial accountability. But judicial accountability cannot mean that we reverse the burden of proof merely because this is a judge and there were some visuals that came out of some cash burning, apparently some cash burning in some outhouse in his house. We don't know. Let there be a full-fledged inquiry. There was never a panchnama. There was never any proof or any evidence that was collected. My only point, therefore, is that in a summary manner, an inquiry, in-house inquiry is being conducted, which according to me personally is completely ultra vires the methodology that has been prescribed in our constitution under Article 124. Now let it actually go before the constitution.
Let's get in Lalit to respond to that. Let's take them one by one. Yeah. Let's take them one by one. The first thing that you said, which is that the judiciary has let down one of its own.
I've heard what my colleague has said. I've heard that in detail. No. Yes, I'm going to come to that. I've heard it in detail, and I would respectfully disagree on several counts. First, I don't think a sweeping sentence as simple as this that, the judiciary has let down one of its own. The judiciary is not a tribe, and this is not a tribal war. The judiciary and the highest judiciary stands for justice, and one who metes out justice. Several of us have appeared in Justice Verma's court, very competent judge, written several good judgments. But the larger question is not something about the judiciary letting down its own. It is about the credibility of someone to function as a judge. Now, if large sums of money are found within a secured area, mind you, the house of a judge is protected by security. What comes in, what goes out will be by permission of the judge. You and I can't walk into the house of any judge. And I think respectfully, by the argument that is being put forth is, it runs down every honest judge who works from morning to night and makes sure that they sometimes don't even meet people so that allegations can't be made on them. Now, Justice Verma is looking to do, his legal team is advising him perhaps to look to do at something like, an inquiry in a full-fledged way. Let's do a cross-examination. These technical arguments, and anyone who practices law knows that procedure is the handmaiden of justice. So the issue here was, did he come up with a credible explanation except a denial? It's his house. Let me take it to another issue. In terms of circumstantial evidence, a man and a woman sleep in a house, they are husband and wife, the door is locked from inside, the murder takes place. The man can't say that I don't know how the wife died or vice versa. The circumstantial evidence will point in that direction. If there is no credible explanation, if there is no attempt to even explain the existence of that, except the money, except a denial, you can't run down the top judiciary for doing its job in terms of the Veerasamy judgment, as Chief Justice Khanna at that time did, in terms of the Inquiry Act, in terms of what Justice Datta today has done with Justice Masi, and then say you've let down your own. Because we are the brotherhood of the judiciary, we should look the other way on the questions that are being asked. Let me ask it in a third way. Can a judge with such serious allegations sit down and sit in court, and would anyone have faith in it? So I respectfully disagree. Whether he should have resigned, not resigned, whether he will be guilty or not guilty in the criminal trial is completely different.
That's the most important part, which is the question of credibility, question of confidence in the judge, in judiciary at large. And I think that's the single biggest question, Jayanand.
Well, I think, if you read Article 124 of the Constitution, the phrase that is used is proven misbehavior. How can some misbehavior be proven without there being a full-fledged inquiry? Now, procedure, for example, my very erudite colleague from the bar is saying that, procedure is, can be dispensed with if it comes in the way of justice, essentially what he's saying. But I very respectfully disagree with him. Here, procedure was absolutely critical because you are essentially calling into question the entire career of a judge. Now, what is to say that some money could not have been planted? Or let's take, for instance, the illustration that my friend took about a man and a woman being inside a room and the next morning somebody being found dead. What is to say that somebody didn't slip and fall and hit their head on the bedpost? There has to be some mens rea that has to be established. Some intention has to come out. My point is that the internal in-house committee report came to an immediate conclusion that this judge ought to be removed, and the findings were forwarded to I believe to the President of India.
Okay.
That was absolutely incorrect.
Okay.
If you look at just a moment, Gauri, if you look at the procedure that is laid down in the Judges Inquiries Act, it is crystal clear. You can have a fact-finding report, certainly that can come out in terms of the Veeraswamy judgment, but ultimately the power is strictly within the exclusive domain of Parliament. I am saying that let Parliament please do its job. Parliament should allow this judge an opportunity to cross-examine each and every person who's been put up here as a witness. The truth will only then come out, and cross-examination is the oldest way we have since perhaps biblical times available to us to bring out the truth, and to say that we should dispense with it merely because procedural, nitty-gritties might come in the way of justice or credibility. I think the opposite will happen. Now, just see the effect of demoralizing the entire judiciary. I have one more point to make. The visuals that were put out, why were they put out on day one? Why should it have worked to the prejudice of that judge? He should have been given a fair chance to clear his name. It was never given. Number two, the so-called money that was shown on those visuals, where is it? Why wasn't it seized by the authorities? It was never found. Number three, what is to say that even if we assume for a moment that there was cash burning in that outhouse, we don't know whether it was counterfeit currency, fake currency, or just, play money that was lying there and set on fire. Number four, we don't know what the amount was. It could have been a few lakhs of rupees, which is not a very abnormal thing to be found in anybody's home. There are many questions, and there is also the very important overarching question that what is the protection, therefore, that we offer to our judges? Do we just jump to a conclusion and say that now some visuals have come out and therefore you must be dismissed? Okay. It is in that context that I said that the judiciary has let down one of its own.
Gentlemen, let me just say one thing, which is that, this is not just a legal argument that we are having. Viewers watching this broadcast are only having one single thought in their minds, which is confidence in judiciary. This is not about a legal argument about, whether this was done or whether, specific procedures that both of you, very erudite in terms of the law and the legal process, are talking about. But the faith in judiciary is the larger point. And Nalin Kohli, you had a point to make. Very briefly, sir, we're running out of time.
Very, very briefly. In criminal law, it would be beyond all doubts. In civil law, it would be preponderance of probability. And I'm sorry to say, under civil law, there is a preponderance of probability. This is not a question of a few lakhs. Anyone who goes to the bank, draws money, knows that a few lakhs is a small bundle in your hand. When you're talking of crores, it requires a sack. And that visuals are there for all to see. In the absence of a credible answer, you can't say you've let down the rest of the judiciary. The very fact that you're challenging it in this manner, there are honest judges there who will feel that they are being let down by saying that no, these kind of examples can continue. Now, Justice Verma will get his opportunity under law, what he has to in terms of maybe as far as the criminal trial is there. But in terms of the larger moral question and the ability to dispense justice with such a big question mark on your head is a different issue altogether.
Completely out of time, Jayanant. I am going to give you time.
Very quickly in just 20 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this argument. Given the fact that there are so many questions that are still unanswered, I believe that we will probably have this debate another time, but I have to leave it there today. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me in this edition of India Matters. Well, viewers, the one thing that one can say as far as this case is concerned, this issue is concerned, it comes down to whether you want your case to be heard in the court of Justice Verma. The answer to that itself is something that will make you wonder which way this should go.